Yeah. So I've been talking. No one's hearing. Fantastic. Cheers. Like I was saying, I saw a lot of torsos on the Discord. Really fun to see. A lot of different takes on it and executions of it. It was great. Uh, Fascinating to see. And it was quite a few of you who did it, which was really cool. Ecos Reverse Atsugi, Gria, Captain Boss, Bruno, Romanos, and Wanavir Levy. What up? Alright, so what should we do? What should we draw today? Give it to me. What should we draw? Royal Guard of Corruption. That's pretty cool. Gria the Dolphin Eater. Yeah. Yeah, from yesterday's lunch stream. Tech T-Rex. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I've actually drawn a Tech T-Rex and a Tech Gorilla for some clients. Like 2 years ago, maybe. So we got 3 topics. Any other suggestions? Yeah, you're all gonna add yours? Alright. Flying Tech Avenger. A tequila. Exactly. More or less. Or a gory mecha. Gory mechala. So we got 4 topics. Alright. Let's go with 4 topics. Let's roll the dice. If it's 5 and 6, is my choice. Alright. Number 4. Did you see it, by the way? I didn't check if you saw it. Yeah, I did. Alright. Cool, cool, cool. So it is Cosmoverse. Right? 1, 2. No, it's not Cosmoverse. It's Bruno Romanos. Flying Tech Avenger. Flying Tech Avenger by Bruno Romanos. Romanos. Oh, it's overlapping. Both. I don't know what's with you and your bad luck. There we go. Sneeze button. All right. Thank you. Bless me. Yeah, I doubt baby Jesus have anything to do with it, but I appreciate the sentiment. All right. So, Flying Tech Avenger. Does it need to be one of the Avengers or an Avenger? Flying Tech Avenger. I mean, I don't know what the Avengers look like. I kind of know what they look like, but it's gonna if I try to draw. If I'm going to try to draw the Avengers as they are, I am afraid. Captain Boss, no, this is not a special brush. This is the old line art brush that I used to use. I found it again, and I really like the dirtiness of the brush. Um, so I'm using it again. Yeah. So what I was saying, if I would do like trying to draw the actual Avengers. It's going to be like the horse challenge. It's not going to end up beautiful. It's going to look like a freak show. Hey Shaman, how's it going? So I'm gonna try to kind of at least channel a little bit of like comic hero, some comic hero-ness. But it's already off to a bad start, so I'm just gonna draw something techy. Hey Zialin, how's it going? I'm good, thanks, Shaman. How are you? My daughter woke up at 6 today, so I'm a little bit mangled in my head. So, I was streaming yesterday lunch, and I was working on the octopus lady on a pillar, if you remember. And there was a discussion about like when I was gonna add, if I was gonna add some particles to the painting. And hey Clifford, how's it going? Welcome. And I said no, not yet. More towards when it's finished. And Bo said, when do you know it's finished? And I think that's a good topic to kind of talk about in terms of when you decide that a painting is finished. So I was thinking, let's talk a little bit about that today, because it's an interesting topic, and I would say there isn't really an answer to it. So, but as far as how I see it, right, is first of all, what style are you aiming for? That's like step one, right? Because if I'm going for like a sketchy style, I mean, there's going to come a point where when I start zooming in and noodling the line work here, it's going to be removed from the sketchy style, right? And it's going to be more polished, and it's going to be more clean. So one thing that you have to consider, like to even begin to determine when you believe that you're finished or when you can deem a painting finished, is style, right? What are the requirements of that style according to yourself, or the general accepted criteria for the style? You know, like League of Legends, for example. If you illustrate for League of Legends or Riot, they don't want to see any brush marks. You have to work on all surfaces and all shapes, all marks. There shouldn't be a brush mark. So obviously I'm a very painterly painter. So when I was working for Riot and doing illustrations for them, or one of the things I did for them was illustrations, I really had to like sit and work the marks, like blend, use brushes, selections, working the gradients. And then when, for example, one of the criteria I had for when it felt finished was, all right, there is 0 brush marks left. You know. And that, like, you know, so that's really important, that you'd first define what style you're going for. Hey Sharsa, Gria, you asked Warmix? He can't stand it. That's a good one. Hey Dave Deviant, how are you? Good morning. Yeah, but that holds also truth, like when you can't stand looking at it. For me, how I deem when a painting is finished is when I don't see any major flaws. Like I've removed all major flaws, and most likely I could improve it. I could work more on it, more on it. But I feel usually when I deem it finished is that I pushed the painting as much as I could, have energy to, and then I consider how much changes are needed for me to correct the mistakes I'm seeing. Like some mistakes that you're doing, you're gonna have to restart the whole, like a whole area, right? Ideally, you should have done that before you got to that point where you're trying to finish a painting and you're spotting mistakes. There's always going to be mistakes, and you should always correct them. But there is like a point of return. You know, like if I spend more time on it, I could maybe fix it. But is the time is going to drastically change the painting? And you should also consider: am I going to lose some of the life the painting has by spending 5 more hours noodling everything, or will it go too tight? It's like with sketching. I find sketching is a great indicator of when you should stop. Like a lot of my sketching is like I can make a mark that's like, oh, that's interesting. Then I start adding shit to it, and then the mark is lost, and I overwork that area. Same applies to, let's say, an illustration where there is a certain kind of life and energy to a mark or a combination of shapes and colors and so on, and then you go in and noodle it and noodle it and noodle it, and in the end you've lost what makes it special. While that would be the incorrect way of doing it, right? The correct way of doing it would be understanding what makes it special, going in and subtly pushing it, nudging it tighter, or nudging it more towards a degree of finish. Zealin. Well, the thing is, you learn a thing or two about both aspects of creating art when you do both. So I would say you have to do both in order to learn anything. And one thing I've picked up over the years is that, like, I can aim too high, and I'm thinking like I can do this illustration. This is going to look epic. It's going to be like a cityscape or whatever. And I start working and I can never reach it. Doesn't matter how much I zoom or spend noodling and correcting, and there is going to be a roof of my skill set, and I'm going to reach it at some point. And when I reach that, that's going to be as good as I can make it. But if I would have never pushed myself to that extent of trying really, really hard to my utmost extent to use all the knowledge I have in order to try to finish something, I wouldn't have taken the journey, and I wouldn't have grown, and wouldn't have increased my chances of making the next try even better, right? That's why, like, you should do anatomy if you're a character artist, anatomy studies, because the more you do it, the better you get, and the easier it is for you to not fail, right? And you layer information in your mind. You don't like plug and play information. You add knowledge on top of knowledge. And only to do that, you have to put the hours in. You have to do the practices. You have to do you have to go layer by layer. And the more, for example, you can take shortcuts, the fewer layer you add, but the maybe bigger chunks, but they're also very unstable. If you remove one of those layers, all of a sudden the whole thing, collapses. While if you have if you don't take shortcuts and you learn it fully, if you fail at some of those layers, it won't matter too much because the foundation is so solid. Severed, or Severed, Severedo, Severed Zero. You have to, yeah, absolutely Severed or Severed. I definitely look at my own art and think, yeah, that's cool. But what that usually happens, well, while I'm painting, like I tried to explain this before, like while I'm painting, for me it feels like I'm watching TV, like it's something is unfolding, right? I'm kind of paying attention to what my mind and hand is doing, almost like I'm a bystander looking at the things being created. And I definitely go, oh, that's cool. But usually what happens is that like I emerge out from the mode of creating and kind of like, okay, I've really focused on finishing this painting. I really worked hard on this now. What does it look like? And I go like, I can appreciate for what it is. I can appreciate for the creation, and I can also, here's some more. I can also see I can also see where my mistakes are, where I failed, what are the biggest flaws, and I try to limit that as I'm progressing in the painting. You know, like, okay, this hand is obviously bad. I need to change it because, like I said, with knowledge, the same aspect as with knowledge shortcuts. If you're going to build a painting, you want to limit the amount of mistakes as early as you can, because the more you make a painting complicated, the more complex the situation is going to be, and the harder it is to correct it. Shaman, when you work with lines and have a team, do you keep different phases of the line art in case team wants to change something or have a variation to make it easier on them? I mean, when we do line art, for example, we do like this. Let's say we do it like this that I'm doing now, a sketch, and then we do line art on top, and then color underneath or on top or whatever you want. But any structure you have is going to be easier if anyone says, oh, by the way, we need to change the helmet. You don't want to be dealing with a collapsed image at that point if you're going to deliver line art, right? You want the line art to be separated if it's line art. Atsuki, yeah. That happens a lot as well. And for me, when I start nitpicking and small changes, that's when I stop. I usually, I practiced this way of kind of considering when a painting is done, is that I see that it reaches a certain level of quality in finish and render, right? And then I say, okay, I'm going to give myself 1 more hour to do some changes. And after that, it's going to be finished. So then I go, okay, what do I need to improve within this hour to finish this painting? It's like, okay, the light is a little bit flat at the focal point. Okay, make a note of it. The right hand is awkward. Okay, make a note of it. And then it's kind of lacking like particles in the air or whatever it could be, right? And then I go, all right, okay, those things I should fix, and I fix them to the best of my ability. And then, okay, I'm gonna do I always have like a few steps I do at the end of a painting. It's like, okay, I'm gonna add grading, and then level adjustments. Always. And another thing, in terms of finish, right, is that in style, and in terms of kind of like quality. Let's say you want to go with realism, right? Let's say you use photos. This is obviously not how to do it, but let's play along with this hypothetical situation. You have a photo of a man, right, the head, and you want to add mechanics to his face. I mean, you could do that. You could take your photo of your own face, or have the rights to use the photo. Yeah, sure. Then you need to add, let's say, metallic components to his head, and you start sketching out the components, right? As soon as you start sketching and adding flat pixels to that head, the difference between photorealism or actual photo and your painting the gap is gonna be massive. And the tighter you go, the more accurate you have to be in the light source to match the photo, right? You have to have material complexity, you have to have correct material behavior, because you're going to have to match that pixel density of the photo. You're going to have to match the light source. You're going to have to match the realism. You know, all these aspects to that is what you have to match, right, to make it look consistent. Or you manipulate the photo of the face to lower the pixel density and complexity to a level where both meet. You know, and both of them are correct. None of them are right. Both of them have a different points of finish as well. Hey, Ben Duvar, what up? Captain Bose. Well, it's nothing wrong with adding something in the middle of the process. Like I said, you don't want to build an image that's weak. You know, you want to, at any point in the image when you understand that this is not going to end well, I need to do X, Y, and Z changes. You should do them. But then you should question, like, what changes is it going to do to the image? Are the changes correct? You know, you have to act a little bit like an art director. And in terms of when you are your own art director and you have to deem the painting finished yourself, you have to consider the goal and the usage and purpose of the image. But usually what's involved is that you have to reach a certain standard of render, right? You don't want to... A few artists can explain a lot of things with a few brush marks. But let's say, take Jamie Jones, right? He makes brush marks. He's very loose and suggestive and accurate in his marks. But what he does after the fact is that he works everything. He works it up to a certain point where he still has the juiciness of you know, a live painting, if you may, versus a tight illustration. There's a balance there, but that balance only he understands, because it's his style, right, and his taste. I'm quite sure he could like render the shit out of an illustration and it would look amazing. But for him, the purpose of doing those illustrations are probably not to make a beautiful illustration, but that will regardless, it will be the result of it, right? But his purpose usually in his paintings is to capture that moment, right? To capture the feeling of whatever they hired him to do. Let's take someone else in comparison. Let's say Wesley Burt, who's a character designer. his character designs are clean and readable and strong, but they're also not super tight. And there's other character artists that they spend lots of time on rendering and presentation. It looks great, and everything is understandable and readable. But you can't argue that both, let's say, Wesley Burt and the other hypothetical artist, when you put those works next to each other, both hold their own rights, right? Both of them are finished, quote unquote finished. But one is significantly looser. One is significantly way more tighter and more complex, and probably took longer time. So it's a little bit, you know, what's your poison? You know, it's nothing wrong with either. It's just what you're happy with doing. Shaman. Well, if like with all things art and all things life, the more you do it, the better you get at it, right? So next time you're painting something, be aware of what you're doing and when you're considering it finished. Practice that thinking. Like, what's the purpose of what you're doing, in the sense of what it's going to be used for? What's the target in terms of who do you want to look at it? You know, what's the takeaway from the observer? You have to be a little bit professional in that sense, because you are not, because I'm assuming it's for the industry, right? You are not painting for you as a fine artist. As a fine artist, you can take a ketchup bottle, you know, shit in it and put the color blue in it, and then go on the canvas, and then go, it's finished. It's exactly what I wanted. The purpose of it is exactly as I think it is. But because it's production art or with marketing purposes, there is certain quality that it has to try to reach in terms of polish and finish and presentation. Because in this industry, it's not only you that are going to use it, right? There's going to be a team. There's going to be a purpose behind it. So let's take Riot illustration style versus production art. One next to the other is vastly different, but they're both used in the same industry, right? And the purpose of them are significantly different. That when you see let's say a Riot splash art, the purpose is to wow and wonder, and invite you to the snippet of a world, right, where you are existing and observing the character in its wild, right? Versus, let's say, the design of the character that they illustrated. It's a heavily production-orientated image, breakdown of everything. There's suggestions of animation. You see the gauntlet from all sides and so on. But if you would take the production art and say, "Here's my illustration," you would go, why no? You know, it wouldn't work. I mean, yeah, absolutely, you should explore things, but you should also master your trade in what you do. There's you know, what's it called? Reverence? When you look up to something. Skill always impresses. Regardless of style, regardless of level of finish, skill and execution goes a long way. So that's why you have to. What's with the mic today? you have to consider you have to consider what your target is, what's your goal, where do you want to sit, and kind of like in what category of style do you want to be at. Yeah, you can say, well, of course you want to be yourself, but you could probably categorize yourself or where you want to go in a certain style, like loose and suggestive, painterly, photorealistic, um, artist X, or whatever, you know. Chest hair ASMR. Captain Bose, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, practice makes perfect. You have to practice your process, and one of part of the to challenge yourself in terms of level of finish and things is like, okay, I'm gonna add two characters instead of one. This design is gonna be uh, inspired by that, or I'm gonna try to push the complexity of joints in this one, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But you know, the whole challenge yourself to grow. It's the same with the purpose of if as an artist. Let's say you, Captain Bose, right? I know you want to be a sci-fi concept artist. You know, I know you want to work with designing robots. So you can challenge yourself in terms of complexity. Okay, so how far can I push this design? And you push the design really, really, really far until you can't push it anymore. Until you go, okay, I really like these shapes. If I start changing them, the design will be lessened. I will stop liking it more. So then maybe you can revert to those latest changes and go back to the version before and go, yeah, this actually looks better. But it's this little area over here maybe is the one that messes with me, and then you go and change it, and then at some point you go, right, I can't touch this anymore because I feel like every time I touch it, it breaks even more. So this is as good as I can make it for now, in this week. Then you go, all right, that's cool. This is as good as I could make it. That's pretty nice. And then you set your new task, your new challenge. Okay, I'm gonna design I really like the idea of designing a unicorn robot or whatever you want, right? So then you go, okay, what should it look like, and all these things, and you build it up, and you try to push it, and maybe the idea itself is flawed or broken, or it only is good in a sketch stage. Then you realize, okay, it doesn't matter how much I polish this or push this, it won't be any good, and then you stop. But the sketch itself could have validity. The sketch itself could have a purpose, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a finished illustration. Everything you do won't go into your illustration portfolio, right? But nevertheless, things can be deemed as finished. That's how I see it, you know. It's a skill in itself to practice when you think it's finished. When you can't pick holes in it, obvious holes, technical flaws, or whatever. When it feels like it, right, this sits pretty good in where I would like it, then you just go, right, finished. Or you go, I'm going to make this the best illustration of a flying tech Avenger possible, right? Then I know if this is far from finished. Then if I want to make it, push it really far. But for a sketch of a flying tech Avenger, I would go, right, this is finished. One, for the reason this time is up, and secondly, I deem that this illustrates the idea as good as I'd like it. Right? I could argue like, oh, I could change the design of this, I could change the design of that. Sure, but is it worth it? Maybe it's the next hour I could spend drawing something that I absolutely love and would love to finish in my portfolio. Who knows, right? Shaman. Ketchup. All right, let's find someone to raid. Warmup, he's open. He's painting some crazy illustration. Okay, let's raid Warmup. We haven't raided Warmup in a while. Is that how you spell it? That's how you spell it. Oh. Thanks everyone for coming. Ketchup, by the way. Good night if you're that part of the world. Have a great day if you're this part of the world. See you guys tomorrow morning for your topic again. It was fun. Thanks for the topic, Bruno. See you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Outro, then raid. Toodles.